What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So something weird is going on at Nintendo. I made a video talking about this on the second channel, but now we have a response from Nintendo themselves to investors explaining why they're spending so much money right now on raw materials and maybe what this could be leading up to. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about God of War Ragnarok. There was a rumor going around that we could see a release date revealed yesterday. That didn't appear to happen, and it looks like frustrations online started to boil over. And we're also going to be talking about Skate. We had a big update for it that after seeing, I gotta say, I'm pretty relieved. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Halo Infinite. There is a big update coming later this year that we're all looking forward to for the most part, and that would be for online co-op for the campaign, which is something that should have been there at launch. It's just taken them seemingly a year post-launch to get this thing done, but it does look like in about 2 weeks they will start flighting this thing, which means they will be testing it. They posted this up over on the Halo Waypoint site saying Halo Infinite Campaign Network Co-op Preview. In this, they talk about some of the challenges they had with the campaign, since having co-op would mean that you would have multiple people existing in this large open world. And they also wanted to make sure that if you join someone else's game, that you would get progress from that as well, not like what we see with other games where if you join in on someone's game, whatever you're doing there just benefits them, not you. When you go back to your game, everything is still the same, basically. I like the idea of them working that out here. They also talk a bit about being able to play back through different missions that you've completed in the game, which is very important for unlocking different things like skulls that may just be kind of left behind and you cannot get back to it unless you restart the entirety of the campaign. Either way though, July 15th, if you want to be part of that, make sure you sign up for the Halo Insider program and see if you can break it. That's mostly what they're looking to do here, leading up to its official release later this year. Also, here's a strange story that's going on right now. Soul Calibur HD and Soul Calibur 2 HD have been completely pulled down from digital storefronts, and no one seems to be able to figure out why. In fact, we can see this over on Fanbyte from Imran saying, "No one will say why Soul Calibur disappeared from digital stores. The HD versions of the first two Soul Calibur games are no longer being sold on digital marketplaces, and Bandai Namco won't say why." Imran actually talks about pressing them and asking them through emails and all this why exactly it was pulled down, and he hasn't been able to get any kind of response from Bandai, and that's kind of it. We're just trying to figure out why Soul Calibur HD and Soul Calibur HD 2 have been pulled down. This happened a little over a month ago, actually. It was at least noticed, and since then, it's just been like, why are these gone? And I mean, it could be the case of maybe an HD collection. There could be something with trademark or rights issues. That's not uncommon in games with guest characters. Remember, Soul Calibur 2 has had characters like Spawn in there, so hard to say what's going on here. I assume Bandai would eventually explain what happened, but who knows, maybe they want to sweep it under the rug and move along. Oh, and real quick, I wanted to do a bit of an update as we had more information come out around the person who asked Nintendo about F-Zero and Baten Kaitos and all of this. Take a look at this. This is over on Business Insider. It said, diehard Nintendo fans spent, get this, over $40,000 buying stock, and then asked top executives why the company won't make more of a fan favorite series. I mean, yeah, that's definitely a die-hard Nintendo fan. I mean, you buy the stock, it could appreciate, it could depreciate. Technically, you can then sell it afterwards, I guess. But to put in $40,000 just to ask Nintendo a question about older franchises that you want to see revived on like the Switch or maybe the next system or something is, well, it sure is a dedicated fan move. I will give them credit there, but hey, they got what they wanted, which was to go up there, ask them a question about F-Zero, and then for Nintendo to mostly give a non-answer. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo and some interesting things that were noticed in their latest report to investors, going over where they are spending their money, specifically with raw materials, which is absolutely through the roof right now. Take a look at this. This was compiled here. We can see this from Nintendo Life. I will leave a link down below in the description if you want to kind of scroll through this yourself, but we can see different fiscal years lined up here, 18, 19, 20, 21, and now 22. And I mean, if you look across the board, for the most part, it's right around that 12,000 to 10,000 millions of yen there. But look at fiscal year 2019, which a lot of people are pointing to as around the time period where Nintendo would have been developing and then obviously putting together Switch Lite and that Nintendo Switch revision with the Mariko chip. Remember, people just look at that as a Switch Lite. Nintendo completely revised the Switch with that new Tegra chip, or revised Tegra chip, to fix up things like the security, but also improve the battery life, which was a big deal then. But even that is less than half of the amount of money that Nintendo is spending right now on raw materials and supplies. And shout out to the investors that were there because they noticed. Think about this, that report went out and they saw it and someone thought, oh wow, we should probably ask about this really large number for materials, because I know the Switch Pro, Switch Revision, new Switch stuff does come up, but investors, yeah, that's a group that's gonna wanna know if there is some new hot item coming from Nintendo, because they may want to invest more thinking, wow, there'd be a massive spike in revenue then if they're selling this new system, there'd be advertising everywhere. But Shintaro Furukawa did at least respond trying to explain this. This is what he had to say. It is necessary to prepare for production by securing the inventory of raw materials and parts as soon as possible. The first reason is that we keep more raw material inventories than before. The second reason is the change in accounting due to the application of the new revenue recognition standard and its impact. So he's bringing in like accounting stuff, and he's talking about trying to stockpile raw materials for the future, which isn't hard to believe in that sense, right? The accounting stuff, you can just kind of throw that in there, just trying to have some other reason behind this. But I mean, if you think about it, yeah, now would be the time to stockpile, because you don't know how long this chip shortage, supply chain disruption will go on. And in their case, they may have been able to have like a bulk deal, essentially, bring in tons and tons of materials for the long haul. Like if this does last 2 or 3 more years, they'll at least have some stuff in reserves to at least continue producing Switch systems. To me, that's the most likely reasoning behind this. Now let's talk about the obvious reason behind this. You know it, I know it. Labo 2 is coming, right? Now, there is the possibility that, yes, Nintendo, 5, almost 6 years, right, into the Switch's life, going into March of 2023, would be thinking about some sort of revision or the next system. There will be a next system at some point. Like, would it be 6 years, would it be 7 years, would it be 8 years? Either way, Nintendo would start to work on it well before then, which obviously they have been working on it this whole time. We've had the NVIDIA leaks that show them working on like the API and the underlying code and everything that they would use for that. But it really comes down to how long they want this generation to last, and if it is something they would like to do while the momentum is still very strong. That's an issue they ran into with the Wii. They waited for momentum to die off before they decided to move on, and there was this weird gap period where there weren't a lot of releases for the Wii at all, and then unfortunately, the Wii U didn't really do much for them. So in this case, I think it would be a better idea for them to just hit it while the momentum is still up with the Switch and just continue to carry it along. With all that said though, I still lean towards the most likely reasoning behind this, which has to do with inflation, prices going up just around these parts becoming more and more scarce, availability and lines to put these systems together, and so on there. I mean, that is still very, very high though, if you consider the fact that it's more than double the amount of materials that Nintendo seemed to be stockpiling when they were creating the Switch Lite and the Mariko Switch. Does make you at least think in the back of your mind that maybe there is some sort of new device coming from Nintendo. And in that case, people are going to be saying, oh, Switch Pro, Switch 2, and that's when Nintendo drops, yes, the Nintendo Switch Lite OLED model. Next up, let's talk about God of War Ragnarok, one of my most anticipated titles for this year, because I do believe it's coming out in 2022, despite it really looking like it might not, with how many, I mean, the days go by and people are like, oh, we're in July. Is this game still coming out this year? Well, according to Cory Barlog, it is. We can see this over on Twitter. Dear all, if it were up to me, I would share all the information when I know about it, but it is not up to me. So please be patient. I promise things will be shared at the earliest possible moment they can be. We make games for you. We get to make games because of you. He's gone on since this tweet, replying to different people who said, oh, God of War must be delayed and all this stuff. And he says, no, it hasn't been delayed. Not necessarily saying absolutely 2022, but many people we have seen from Sony Santa Monica, whether it's animators and so on, really expect this game to be coming out this year. Now, if you remember, We had sources like the Snitch, who's been dead on accurate like this entire way, and there have been a lot of theories as to how that's a thing. One that gets thrown around is that they're able to see YouTube videos that are unlisted currently in preparation of big time announcements, and then kind of gather what's happening from the title, the dates, and all these different things. But the Snitch did mention, yeah, the 30th, right? That was through like the binary code with Kratos in the background. Well, it didn't seem to happen. And just to make things more interesting, Kotaku actually got a hold of the Snitch. They said there was going to be a reveal, but Sony delayed it. It was not a state of play or a new gameplay trailer. That's all I can say. It's a shame. I'm more worried about the game. To me, it means it's not polished enough. Well, that part just sounds like speculation there, but Jason Schreier did also chime in saying on God of War Ragnarok rumors, as of very recently, there was indeed a release date announcement planned for Thursday, June 30th. Per people familiar, recent tweets from Corey Barlog suggest that is no longer happening. Still, as far as I know, the game has not been delayed again. So while the theory around how the Snitch's getting their information is from unlisted videos, I mean, it seems like everyone's kind of alluding to the idea that Sony was just going to drop a blog post, and that's kind of it, which, I mean, yeah, that would work considering there's probably going to be special editions for God of War Ragnarok, which includes the game and maybe even a system bundle like we're seeing with Horizon Forbidden West now. But it does appear that people are kind of running out of patience with God of War Ragnarok, as there are a lot of messages going on Twitter through replies and even just reaching out to them for employees and developers at Sony Santa Monica and just at Sony in general. And it's very odd to me because I know there's a lot of excitement around God of War Ragnarok, and I'm sure people would like to know when it's coming out. Some people are saying they want to plan around it, which I guess you're trying to find a PS5, although it's going to be on the PS4 as well. But I would expect right now that God of War Ragnarok is coming out this year. November appears to be the target month based on what we've heard from people like Jason Schreier. So that's kind of where I am now. It's strange that Sony hasn't just made it official yet, unless they are still concerned around the state of the game. It's possible that the 30th is on its way. The day before, Sony goes, oh wait, maybe we want to do something a bit different with its grand reveal, because they do want to make sure this is as good as it can be with the eventual reveal for that release date, special editions, the whole thing. But I don't think it's going to be too much longer until Sony does reveal that release date. It could be next week for all we know at this point. But the obvious thing here is don't contact employees and developers at Sony asking about God of War Ragnarok. There were some people mentioning that there were just some wild DMs getting sent around from different people on Twitter to developers. And you see it in the replies and all of this too. So everyone just kind of relax a bit. I'm still anticipating 2022 for God of War Ragnarok. We'll just have to see when Sony's ready to tell us. Hopefully, it's not too much longer we have to wait. Next up, let's talk about the new Skate game. We had heard there would be some sort of update from the team at EA around this game, and that it probably happened sometime in July, but yesterday they dropped a video that basically just says, Skate, we're still working on it, which when I saw the video, which you can see it here, looks like it's in very early development. They said like pre-alpha. I was very happy to see that, and it sounds weird for me to say that, I'm sure, but the fact that people were saying, oh, this game actually might come out sooner than you think, and immediately I go, wow, are they going to release it as basically early access for full price with little to no content and then just build on it after the fact? Not necessarily. In fact, it appears they're going to be doing their own insider program where you would be playing alongside of them and working to build it out through your suggestions. In fact, they have an entire page that has now launched for playtest registration. They say Skate Insider Playtesting Signup. You can access this now through the EA playtesting, and they say as a Skate Insider, you have the chance to play early versions of the game and provide feedback throughout our development journey. We need to scale access to Skate gradually as development progresses to ensure a smooth experience, and that means we can't guarantee how soon you'll get to play. In the trailer, though, they showed a lot of suggestions that were popping up and that they were attempting to accommodate those suggestions, and from what I could tell, one of the big improvements they're making here is like the on-foot part of the game. Specifically when you go off your board and you run around. They showed like parkour and people were running up the walls and jumping all over the place. So it seems like they want to give you movement outside of just your board, which is something that progressed as we went through Skate 1, 2, and then 3. So I like the idea of them building on that a bit more. Otherwise, though, it looked like Skate without any textures on the environments or most of the characters, and tells me it's still going to be a couple of years before this game comes out. But I do like that they seem very interested in getting it right, even bringing people in who are actually playing the game a lot to work with them as to what is good and what isn't, and how can we improve this, or what needs to be fixed, and so on there. So hey, if you want to check out Skate, you can get signed up and apparently help them develop the game as you're playtesting different builds. And in our last bit of news, I wanted to circle back around to a story we touched on very quickly yesterday that has to do with 13, which is a game that I was tremendously disappointed with when it came out, because they did a remake of it and it looked like it was like the Fortnite art style, and it just didn't really reflect what I remembered about 13. Well, as we had talked about yesterday, a major update is coming later this year in September, and there's an entire post that was made as well, and we're going to take a look at that very, very quickly here. They say, Microids is delighted to share that a major update for the game 13 Remake, as well as the Nintendo Switch version of the game, will be released on September 13th, 2022. As a reminder, the game is the remake of the iconic cel-shaded FPS from 2003, and it is the adaptation of the 5 first volumes of the Belgian graphic novel of the same name by artist William Vance and writer Jean Van Ham. To achieve the quality standards and offer an optimal gaming experience, Microids decided to entrust the development of 13 Remake to French studio Tower 5, actually quoting one of their games here, Lorn Sword Winter Chronicle. Hard at work for more than a year on a major update for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC versions, the studios also worked on multiplayer content as well as the Switch port of the game. This update, the multiplayer content and Switch version, will simultaneously be released on September 13th. This basically just sounds like, yes, they went back and remade the remake. Now, they showed some screenshots here, I think just to show off the art style, where they are attempting that more cel-shaded look that everyone wanted in the first place. It's also going to come down to the bug fixes and some of the odd things that were going on in that game with the gameplay itself, the shooting and the collision detection, the audio, AI, everything. Again, they are remaking the remake, so I'm hoping it's better. I will check this out again. I bought it on the Xbox, so I'll go through that update, see if it's any better. Like I said, you're going to want to wait for reviews, especially around that Switch version, but the fact they had to bring in a studio to remake it again, and we'll see how this one turns out. Oh, and yeah, the online multiplayer, they finally got that up and running as well for September, so we'll see what happens here with 13. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, will Nintendo release some sort of new Switch hardware in 2022? Look at this, 92% of people decided to try reverse psychology and said no, 8% said yes. I mean, looking at this, now is when Nintendo would be Nintendo and do something weird like a Switch revision when no one's expecting. I was like, no, they're not going to do any kind of new hardware for 2022. This is when you do it. Here's the thing though, with Nintendo, they don't like to give much time between announcement to release. So if they were going to announce it and it's coming out this holiday, we'll say September or October, kind of around that Switch Lite, the Switch revision, the red box Switch release, they'd want to announce it in like July. So I will find out, I guess, in a month or so if anything is happening. I'm still looking towards a big game release to help it, though. I'm kind of thinking Breath of the Wild 2, if Nintendo wants to do it. That'd be what you put it next to. Who knows, though? Like I said, maybe they come out of left field with something like a Switch Lite OLED, which, to be real, is where the OLED screen made more sense in the first place. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Seton saying, hey, never forget the absolute hero of an investor who asked Nintendo repeatedly about the remake of Famicom Detective Club games. Nintendo actually delivered on that one. Here's the interesting about that is we had some transcription from their investors briefing come out, and Nintendo mentioned that being asked of them before Famicom Detective Club, but they had already been working on it in the background and they were kind of skating around it a bit at that time. They just happened to ask about the right game. And this person who went there and asked investors about F-Zero, Batten Kaitos, and all these other games, they rattled off like 4 or 5. So yeah, there is a chance they hit on one that maybe Nintendo is remastering or remaking in the background, and they were trying to be careful about it. But I mean, I guess we'll find out in a couple of years. Maybe there is a new F-Zero game and we can look back on when this person asked at this big investor briefing about it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Whereas Nintendo stockpiling a lot of raw materials, more than twice as much as when they were working to release the Switch Lite and the Red Box Switch. What do you think they're planning right now? And then also, what about God of War Ragnarok? When do you think that game's coming out? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.